Ethics in the workplace is a serious matter, but talking about it doesn't have to be business as usual. Chuck Gallagher, international business ethics expert, learned a lesson about choices and consequences the hard way. But now, he shares his experience so that others don't have to. In his compelling presentations, Chuck starts by setting the scene with his own story and ends by setting the stage for your organization's ethical success. Get real about business ethics with Straight Talk from Chuck Gallagher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Members of the community, His Honor, the mayor's up in the back row. Welcome, Dan. This is always a big night for us at the business school, the Art Vogue Symposium. In your programs, you can read about art. It doesn't say in there. The most important thing is that Art was loved by the faculty and his students. And we're very proud always, the people who remember him well. And he's the kind of professor every student wants and every professor wants to be. And so we honor him tonight with the Vogue Symposium. This is sponsored by the Beacom Opportunity Fund, which is a fee that our students pay to bring special events and special learning, unique learning to our campus. And so we thank the students for funding this event. My name is Mike Keller. I'm the Dean of the Business School. And as I said, we at the Beacom School of Business are very proud to have Mr. Gallagher here and offer this sort of unusual form of ethics education. This year, we're happy that Mandy Wynant has volunteered to do that. Let me say a few things about Mandy, and then she'll introduce Chuck. First, Mandy, thanks for stepping up. Mandy is a senior at USD majoring in business management and economics with minors in French and English. She's a member of the Political Economy Club, the Carbon Task Force, Beta Gamma Sigma, Omicron Epsilon Delta, and the University Honors Program as a thesis scholar. Mandy's thesis that she's working very hard on to complete this semester is titled The Decision of South Dakota School Boards to Opt Out of the State Aid Formula. Mandy will graduate in May, after which she will attend graduate school at USD to earn an MBA. Mandy?
Thank you, Dean Keller. I'd like to welcome the students, staff, faculty, and emeriti to tonight's Vogue Symposium on Ethical Leadership and Corporate Governance. The text used in USD's business ethics class quotes Plato. Good people do not need laws to tell them to act justly, while bad people will find ways around the laws. This statement has never been more true and more prominent than in today's business world than in recent times. Rare is the day when you can turn on the TV, pick up a paper, or surf the web without hearing of the latest corporate scandal. From accounting scandals such as the Arthur Andersen with the faulty auditing of Enron, marketing scandals such as the Simon marketing with the McDonald's monopoly fraud, and finance scandals such as Madoff Investment Securities with their Ponzi scheme, each and every aspect of business faces its own set of ethical dilemmas. Just as Plato said, the laws in these cases did not matter. There were ways around them. What mattered was a commitment to ethical decision-making which was not present. In addition to examples of what not to do, we can look to Plato's good people, or in this case, good corporations, which set examples we can all aspire to achieve. Companies such as Ben & Jerry's, which are committed to a sustainable corporate concept, and Toyota, which focuses on diversity, philanthropy, and the environment, have both set the standards for corporate social responsibility and ethical behavior. These companies, and as many others, do not rely on laws to guide their ethical decision-making. Rather, the decision-makers at these companies act the way they do because it's the right thing to do. We, as business school students, have an exceptional opportunity in today's world not only to learn from the knowledge our professors and textbooks provide, but also to learn from the ethical mistakes and triumphs of corporations and business leaders past, and work to embark upon our future armed with knowledge, understanding, and good moral character. Ethics, from the Greek ethos, meaning the fundamental character of a culture, goes beyond what is legal and what is actually being done and poses the question, what should be done? Good ethics demands you consider all stakeholders and face the decision from their point of view, reflect on all available alternatives, and determine how the decision will impact stakeholders. Only then, after careful and thorough consideration, are you equipped to make an ethical decision. Even with the most vigilant of deliberation, issues can arise after decision-making, and so good ethics also requires examining the outcomes of any decision and making adjustments where needed. Whether or not an unethical decision is made intentionally, the best response is to take the necessary steps to rectify the situation. Tonight's speaker can testify to the concept of making it right. Chuck Gallagher started his life humbly, raised in the projects in a single-parent household. He took these modest beginnings and made a name for himself as the youngest tax partner in a CPA firm. His reputation grew through publications, continuing professional education seminars, and the prestigious honor of being one of only 3 CPAs asked to testify on the new employee benefits provision of the tax law for the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee in 1988. In an effort to sustain his illusory lifestyle, Mr. Gallagher embezzled the trust funds of clients. This decision, in a weak moment, and the pattern of dishonesty which followed, eventually led to the loss of everything Mr. Gallagher had worked for and treasured: his CPA license, his career, his possessions, his wife, and last but not least, the respect he had earned from the many stakeholders in his own life. After serving a federal prison sentence of 18 months, followed by 3 years probation for embezzlement and tax evasion, Mr. Gallagher decided it was time to rectify his situation. Since his sentence, Mr. Gallagher has devoted his time to sharing his story. Through giving his audience a first-hand account of the consequences of unethical decisions, he has been given a second chance and rebuilt his career to tremendous success again. Chuck Gallagher learned his lesson the hard way, and tonight he shares his tale so that we don't have to. Economist Alan Greenspan said, "Rules cannot substitute for good character." And so tonight we are fortunate enough to welcome Mr. Chuck Gallagher, who through his experiences can help us make the decisions which demonstrate ethical thinking and good character.
Every choice has a consequence. On October 2nd, 1995, I took 23 steps. That is approximately the distance from where I entered to here. As I took those 23 steps, walking slowly, I thought about my wife. I thought about my career. I thought about my home. I thought about my possessions. I thought about everything that defined who I was. And on the 24th step, I reached out my hand and opened the door and stepped in to federal prison. As I took those steps, I was Chuck Gallagher. I was a somebody in the community that I grew up in, that I worked in. As I stepped through that door, I became 11-642-058. An inmate in federal prison. What most of you would define as a nobody. Every choice has a consequence. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something. it's kind of fun. I get to look at the folks on the front row or close to the front row and they have this look on their face. Y'all in the back, you should see it. It's like, what did he do? Oh my gosh. Is he dangerous? He's got handcuffs on. But I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you all to stand to your feet, please. It's a lovely night in South Dakota. So standing is a good thing. Now, I'm going to ask you as you stand to your feet, I am not going to call on you, nobody will be embarrassed, but as I ask you to stand to your feet, I want you to look around. If you're on the front or wherever, look around, look at the people that are behind you. Look at the people that are in front of you, directly in front of you, directly behind you, to your left and to your right. Now, I want to ask you a question. Let's assume for a moment, just for a moment, that everything you have ever done in life is known by the person to your left, to your right, in front of you, or behind you. Everything. The thought that first came to your mind when I said everything that you have ever done is known by the people around you. That thought that creeped into your head that said perhaps nobody knows that, perhaps that is hidden deeply, darkly away somewhere. So let me ask this question. If, in fact, you were transparent and people could see those thoughts or actions, how many of you, well, let's put it this way. I'll change it. How's that? Take a seat if you would be embarrassed or ashamed of those things that those people might know. Well, I'm amazed. Okay. I expected a lot of you to sit down, but I thought surely there would be one of the students that would stand up and continue remaining standing when the rest sat down, but perhaps with the faculty here you won't do that. You know, I know it's getting close to exams and you have to think about what will happen and who's going to see me. I'm going to first, it's always handy to have keys to these things, so I'm going to see if I can go ahead and ditch the handcuffs for a moment. You should see what happens when you go through airport security with handcuffs in your carry-ons. It really is quite fascinating. It is, it's just quite a wonderful thing. You get to see the TSA people looking at you like, is that really okay? I mean, why is this person carrying handcuffs on the airplane? But let me do a quick clothes change here to get a little more comfortable, get out of the orange jumpsuit. For those of you who hopefully will never have the real experience of going to prison, this is not prison issue because prison issue does not allow for long sleeves. And you can't buy it. Handcuffs are easy to get on the internet. The orange jumpsuit was tough. Now, I came out here in a rather unusual way, and I said every choice has a consequence. But now that I'm more comfortable, let me talk to you a bit about choices and consequences. And let me start off this way by rewinding the tape a bit. Let me go back to 1990, because in 1990, as you so eloquently did, wonderful introduction, thank you so much. But in 1990, I was in fact tax partner in a CPA firm. I had testified before Congress, written articles in national magazines, and taught continuing professional education courses. And part of my job was to travel around the country to provide the continuing education courses that CPAs needed in order to continue to be CPAs. So I remember in 1990, I was in Boise, Idaho. And I was teaching a continuing professional education class, and we'll say that the class was about, well, maybe half the size of my right and your left, the number of people that are sitting there. Now, for those of you who have ever been sitting through an 8-hour class on tax law, you have to understand that it can be very boring, okay? Not saying that what you're getting here is boring, but you get an hour or so, maybe 2 or so, at any given point in time, but the CPAs have to sit there through 8 hours of this. So my job was to not only teach the law, but to do it in a fun manner so that at the end of 8 hours, they in fact got their credits, learned something, and everybody walked away happy. So we would do fun things like have tax sing-along. Well, you all do that, don't you? Don't you all? You know, like tax returns, money on the way. We fill out the messy forms, but the clients have to pay. I mean, things like that, you know. Stuff to get the folks excited. So I remember sitting there, it was November of 1990, and I mean, we were having a good time. You know, the folks were there, they were learning something, and at the same time, we had some fun and some joy. And in the process, I guess it was mountain time in Boise, I'm trying to get my times accurate, but in any event, my stomach was on East Coast time, and it was mountain time, and we were breaking for lunch. And when I went outside the door, there was this pink slip on the door. Now in 2009, a pink slip has a different connotation than it did then. That was the little message thing that said, while you were out, and it listed whom to call. There was a message. And in this case, it was from one of my partners, call the firm ASAP. Now, I sat there, I pulled the message off the door. I knew we had basically an hour for lunch, and I thought to myself, eat, call, eat, call, eat, call. You know what? I'll make this a short telephone conversation. So I went to place the telephone call. Now, to the faculty folk toward the front part of the room and guests, you all will understand this better than the students interspersed here through the room, because in those days, you did not walk around with a telephone strapped to your waist. Now you do. Now we have BlackBerries. And if you're addicted, it's a crackberry. And, you know, and there's all kinds of new terminology. And to those on the front rows, you all understand that you in the back have dexterity in your thumbs that I've never dreamed of having. How somehow you could sit there and text stuff or do it with one hand without looking is beyond my mental comprehension. But nonetheless, in those days, it was the proverbial payphone, and you had a little calling card. So I did my little calling card with the payphone, and I called my partner, and he said, Chuck, he said, I know you're out in Boise, Idaho. I'm not sure when you're coming back. I think it's sometime this week, but I can't keep up with your schedule. But one of the clients that you invested money for, one of those clients has a change in their economic circumstances, and they need to liquidate the investment, and they need to do it ASAP. If you'll tell me where the file is, I'll be happy to go ahead and begin the process for you because I know you're out of town. That was what I heard. As those words rang through my head, I knew, God knew, that I had not invested that client's money. The fact was, I had stolen it. And as I knew, hearing those words, I knew that my life was getting ready to change. It was like this proverbial house of cards had been built, this grand illusion had been created, and with the stroke of one telephone call and one card from the deck, the house was preparing to collapse. And I had my partner on the other end. I did the only thing that I knew to do at the time. I danced. You know, not this kind of dance. I'm not really good at that. But I danced verbally. I said, Dan, I said, look, let me first say to you that the investment isn't like with Merrill Lynch. I just can't call the brokerage firm, liquidate the stock, and he's going to get his money in 3 days. It's not easily liquidatable. But I do know where to go and what to do and a call to make. So listen, let me get off the telephone. Remember, I'm on a different time zone than you. That was shucking jive. And I'll go ahead and make the call. You just call the client and tell him the work is in process. He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And I said, "Look, man, I got to go." I said, "They're already back in class." And he said, "Okay, okay." And with that, our conversation ended. I lost my appetite. Just the idea of lunch wasn't nearly as significant at that point. I went back in that afternoon, and I've got a pretty good memory. But that particular afternoon, I will tell you, I was on autopilot. I know what the topic was that we were talking about. I had taught the topic many, many times. So I went back in, and for the remaining 3.5 hours or 3 hours and 45 minutes, I did what I was supposed to do. Here it is, shuck and jive. Everybody got what they wanted. The evaluation forms were filled out. People were okay. They left. And I will never forget coming over, sitting down in this hotel room before the maintenance people came to clean up. And I wept because I knew life had changed. I'm going to be real candid with you. That night, I wasn't sure what to do. If you read media today, MSNBC, CNN, you name it, on the media, there are multiple accounts of people who have now been discovered or uncovered where frauds have taken place. I was reading about one, the gentleman where there was multiple deaths involved because of what appeared to be a Ponzi scheme. And I will tell you that that night I considered suicide. Everything that I had created was an illusion. Oh, was there real, honest, legitimate success associated with it? Absolutely there was. But that success was so intertwined with illusion that you couldn't separate fact from fiction. And it created something that really wasn't real. The only problem with my little temporary plan that night was, I am a chicken. Okay? I don't like pain. Now, I don't know about you. Ladies in the room, as you continue to live over time, you will find, guys, sorry, that we guys don't do pain real well. That's just, and I see some of the ladies shaking their heads like, that's right. My husband is such a wuss. He just can't stand it. I mean, and that's true. I hate pain. I hate anything to do with it. And if it's a needle, that's even worse. I think it was because when I was a little kid, y'all don't have this now, but when we were little kids and you got sick, flu, whatever, it was bend over, boy, and you got stuck with a penicillin shot. I got stuck so many times I felt like it was a pincushion back there. So I hate needles and things like that. And I'm thinking, how would I take care of myself? I'm in a hotel room. It's not like I can do the garage kind of carbon monoxide thing. I didn't have a gun. I'm not a gun kind of person. Now, y'all out in South Dakota, you got that gun thing, you can wear them out, and there you go, little buckaroo, I don't know what y'all shoot at, but whatever. I do appreciate the 75 mile an hour speed limit, though. From a guy back on the East Coast, when you see 60 on the interstate, 75 is right. That is just good there. Feeling really fine driving down the road here. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got no gun. The carbon monoxide thing won't work. I got one of those blue Bic shavers. The little plastic ones you could whack forever. It doesn't even shave good. You're not going to be able to hurt yourself with that. And the only other thought was jump off the building. And I've often wondered, never wanted to ask, never could ask actually, what happens once you jump? What do you think about between there and splat? I mean, you've got to know there is some thought that enters your mind. So I'm thinking to myself, this is not really working. So I did what I could do at the moment. I took out the yellow pages. Today, you would Google it. Okay, but that didn't exist in 1990. So I took out the yellow pages and I started looking for psychiatrist, psychologist, proctologist, whatever. If it was a physician and started with a P, I would be real happy. Now the folks down the front understand what a proctologist is. The rest of you, you'll learn. Wait till you get a little age on you, you'll learn. And I started calling these places. And it was very, very frustrating because, in all honesty, if you have what I would call a dark night of the soul, if it really is very, very dark, you don't want to hear people on the other end saying, "I'm sorry, you've reached the office of such and such. Our office hours are from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. You've reached us after office hours. If you'll leave your name and number, we'll be happy to give you a call. Have a nice day." I mean, if you're wanting to off yourself, have a nice day is just not something that really works. And I heard that the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time. I was beginning to think this wasn't supposed to work this way, and on the 8th call, I actually got someone to answer the phone. There was this gentleman on the other end. "Hello. Hi, my name's Chuck Gallagher. I need to talk with somebody." His response, "I'm the last person here. I'm getting ready to leave to go meet my wife for dinner, but if you'll give me your name and number, I'll be happy to give you a call in the morning." To which I said, "I'm considering suicide." And he said, "Let's talk." I do not know who I talked with. I don't know if he was a psychiatrist, a psychologist. He could have been the janitor for all I know. I have no clue. I do not know if we talked for 2 minutes, 20 minutes, or 2 hours. I don't recall. But in our lives, there are times when there are things that are just like etched in granite. And what he said to me was etched. And these are his words. He said to me, "Son, you've made a bad mistake. But you are not a mistake." Let me repeat that. "Son, you've made a bad mistake, but you are not a mistake." Then he said, "The choices that you make now will define your life in the future and will set the stage and the standard for your 2 sons. Make those choices wisely." When the conversation was over, I went to bed, committed that I would make wise choices. Now, let me say something to you because, and I'm going to kind of deviate for just a second, because I think it's important to really understand the impact that you can have on people's lives. And so I'm going to go to Dallas, Texas. In Dallas, Texas, every week they have a Citizen of the Week. And I'm sitting there listening to KRLD 1080 on the AM dial in Dallas, Texas, and you did that naturally because you wanted to know what the traffic was going to be like. Because traffic could be wicked in Dallas, Texas, and if you get stuck somewhere, you could be stuck for hours. So you wanted to find out what was taking place so you could go someplace else. But on this particular day, on KRLD 1080 in Dallas, Texas, they were talking about the Citizen of the Week, and it was a kid who was in the 7th grade. And they interviewed this little child, and his mother was there, and she was oh so proud because what he had done is he had saved another kid's life. And this is what had taken place. The kids were all crowded around in the 7th grade. One of them was eating a tangerine or an orange or something, whatever. But anyway, they put it in their mouth and got choked. Now, most of us in the room at some point in time have been choked. If you're choked, you don't get to say, "I'm choked, can y'all help me?" That means you can breathe, okay? Being choked means you can't. So you're like, and nothing comes out. So here's this kid, and nothing is coming out because he's choking on a tangerine slice, and all the other kids were like standing around watching him die. It's kind of weird, but you know how kids are. So this one little kid comes rushing around. He grabs the kid and does the Heimlich maneuver, at which point in time the tangerine slice goes flying out of his mouth, and he saves the kid's life. And for that, he was the Citizen of the Week in Dallas, Texas on KRLD 1080, and they went to his mother and said, "What do you think?" "Oh, I think that's so wonderful, I'll raise this nice little child." But she didn't know how he knew how to do that. So, the radio announcer puts the mic and says, "How did you learn how to do that, son? Did you take a class?" And he was like, "Heavens, no. I saw it on the movies." I said, "Really? What movie?" "Mrs. Doubtfire." Okay, so the side note to this is if you're sitting there and you're watching a movie and you think there really is no redeeming value, there may be something that could save a life. Robin Williams is, he was kind of there, okay? So this kid didn't get up that morning and think, "I'm going to save a life today." The kid got up that morning and, did whatever he did as a 7-year-old, went to school, and it just was a sequence of circumstances. The same thing was true with me in Boise, Idaho in 1990. 5 minutes later, I would not have talked with that man. But the reality was, he didn't get up that morning either and think, today I'm going to go to the office and save a life. But his comments did save a life and were profound. Well, the next day I hopped a flight, flew to Charlotte, North Carolina, thought to myself, talk to partners, talk to wife, talk to partners, talk to wife, talk to partners, talk to wife. This was a terrible flight. I'm sitting there thinking, what am I supposed to say to these people? Because I am getting ready to change completely the entire perception of who their partner or their husband was. I chose the partners. I thought that might be a little easier. Give me a little practice before the wife. So I went in, we sat down in the conference room, the partners were sitting there, and I told them what I just told you, with a bit more detail. They heard it. One of the partners looked at me. We were sitting about the distance where you and I are sitting, but he looked at me, he had steel blue eyes. He said, "Well, I have a solution." Now, I was thinking to myself, yes, I knew my partners would come through. I did wrong. I'm willing to confess that I've done wrong, but they're going to figure out some way to pull this thing together. We're going to be able to figure out something to sweep it under the rug and we'll be okay. And I was thinking, there was just this jubilance that popped up. He looked at me and he said, "I think you should commit suicide." He said, "The 2-year contestability clause for your life insurance is long past. You've got plenty of insurance." He said, "We didn't deserve it." He said, "Our clients didn't deserve it." He said, "They deserve to get their money back. We don't deserve the tainted reputation you've given us." He said, "And after all, once the life insurance pays and they're paid off, your wife and children will have plenty of money and the community will take pity on them because of what you've done." My other partner sitting over here looked at me and he said, "Well, you're fired." Y'all, somehow I expected that. That was not an unexpected thing. He did it with flair, though. It was kind of like a young Donald Trump. He had this behind it. There was power in those words. And then he said to me, "But somehow I think that you probably will land on your feet some way, probably in sales and marketing." Recently, I was a senior vice president of sales and marketing in a publicly traded company. I know that's a little odd for a convicted felon to be a senior VP in a public company, but every choice has a consequence. Good choices yield positive results. I rather liked the one partner's prediction about the future instead of the other one who read my mind from the night before. Given the two, I'm going there. I did go home and talk to my wife. We'll get into that in a little more detail. That was tough. Life changed. Reality hit. But let me do this. Let me rewind the tape just a little bit further. I'm going to go back because when I was a kid, At the ripe old age of 2, my dad died of diabetic complications, so I was in a single-parent household. My mother did not have a high school education. She was born and reared in the southeast United States. So if you are female, raising a child, single parent, without a high school education, there aren't many jobs you can do. Now, in those days, you could work for a textile company. That was before textiles went to China, okay? So you could work for a textile company. Or you could work for the lunchroom in the cafeteria, you know, because anybody could kind of undo the can of peas or whatever the lunchroom stuff used to be. Or you could work as a janitor. She did all three. But one of the things that was profound is my mother always told me, she said, son, she said, it doesn't make any difference what your economic circumstances, you can be somebody. It's important to work hard, it's important to get an education, and you can be somebody. And I believed her. No reason not to. So when I was in high school and we lived in the projects, most of the kids in the projects saw that there was this like door that they couldn't pass through. It was like they were in economic poverty and they could never go anywhere and they could never do anything, that they were going to be relegated to this lifestyle. I didn't see it that way. I took a broom handle, cut the end of the thing off, hammered a nail in one end of it, and told the people in the housing project, people are throwing out trash. Don't you need somebody to pick it up? They said, yes, that was my first job. After all, opportunity and entrepreneurism, I thought that made perfect sense. So when I graduated, I put myself through college. I got a master's degree in accounting. I began the process of being somebody. That part was all legitimate and worked. But it was the 80s. Now, I say that as if for some reason in that decade you can pass stuff off. I'm not going to let us get by with that. It was the 80s. We're in 2009. I'm going to say to you, I travel the country. I talk at universities all around the world. And the reality is, it isn't much different today. Oh, we got an economic recession. That's true. But we're complaining about things that we would have complained about in the 80s as well. But in the 80s, here's what I learned. Beyond the fact that I went through all of the appropriate educational processes, one of the things we learned was the power of leverage. Okay? And one of the things that came out of the power of leverage was something like this. Let me see if I can get this right. I kind of remember one of the instructors going through this. You buy the most expensive house that you can barely afford. Because as time goes on, once you have the job, of course that's the way you're going to qualify to be able to buy the house that you can barely afford. Once you have that job, two things should take place. One, if you're doing a good job, your income should rise, right? Secondly, if you continue to make your house payments in a timely manner, that's a good thing to do, then eventually what happens is you start paying more toward the principal, which means the debt on the house goes down while your income is rising, and the divergence between the two means you have more equity, and if you have more equity, you have more ability to borrow money to buy more stuff, because he or she who has more stuff is more important. Now, I know that everybody doesn't buy into that, but you'd be surprised how many who do. The bigger the house, the flashier the car, the cooler the clothes, the neater the watch, fancier the shoes, all of those things are things that people will judge your level of success, your level of importance, your level of somebodyness. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And I've got to be honest with you. It worked. When I traded the Buick for a BMW, it was quite amazing the impact that it had on prospective clients. They were like, well, he must be doing really well. You know, we should trust our accounting work to the successful folks. It's flash. When you look at the major magazines today, what do you see in the major magazines? You either, if you're really young and you're into the hip-hop scene, you see bling. And if you are a bit more conservative, in a business school, you see Rolex or Tag. You see the brands that you should aspire to be wearing because, after all, if you wear a tag on your arm, you're like Tiger. And Accenture wants to be like Tiger. So we brand ourselves by stuff. So it's 1985 going into 86. And I get a call on the telephone. One might assume that me and telephones that's not good, but there's a certain part of that. But I get a call on the telephone, it's from the banker. He says, Chuck, he said, by this time I'm a tax partner in a CPA firm. He said, Chuck, according to our records, you are 2 months behind in your house payment. Is there a problem? Okay, let's time out for a second. What do you think that plays like? You're a tax partner in a CPA firm, you've done all of the stuff, you've got the degree, you're holding yourself out as a professional to help other people, you're testifying, you're teaching, you're doing all this stuff, and you can't make your house payment. Do you think that endears the bank to you? Do you think that they're going to want to send you business if you can't manage your own money? What do you think? No. Even in the back of the room with the light in my eyes, I can see heads going like that. So I'm sitting there thinking, this is not good. So I'm trying to ask myself the question, what should I do? So I did, again, the only thing that I knew to do. Dance. Shuck and jive. I said, are you sure you haven't misapplied the payment? I mean, there is a lot that we learn in the university system. One is key words. So if you can at least throw them off track for just a moment, not that I'm trying to teach you anything bad, but I mean, that's the reality of what took place. If they misapplied it, then, at least I bought myself some time to figure out what to do. Let me say this. Everybody in this room has been or will be faced with temptation. You have been or will be faced with temptation. The question is not being faced with it. The question is, what choice do you make when faced with it? That's where the issue of integrity, of honesty, and of ethics comes into play. You can take all the courses in the world. You can learn all the theories in the world. But the question is, when temptation is facing you square on, what will you do? And the most honest, ethical person with the highest integrity will still be faced with choices that come from temptation. Now, how many people in here were born in June? Raise your hand. Okay, fair number. All right, so let's talk to the June people for just a minute. Most of us born in June are Geminis. And Geminis are known as two people, the twins. So we naturally will talk to ourselves. We naturally just carry on conversations. It is quite a normal thing. Now, some of the rest of you in the room are like, I don't understand what he's talking about. But we understand carrying on a conversation with yourself is quite a normal sequence. So I was sitting there, having gotten this banker off of the telephone, I was thinking to myself, self, you need money. I need to make 2 months worth of house payments. Now, it wasn't like I could go to the bank and say, do you mind floating me a short-term loan so I can make my house payments? That wasn't really going to work. And I could have gone to parents or to friends to borrow the money and be honest, which would have been the right thing to do, but I chose not to do that. I carried on this conversation. By the way, it used to be in the old days that if you rode down the road and you were sitting there talking to yourself, people thought you were like schizophrenic or something, that you were weird talking in the car. Thankfully, we have Bluetooth. Now that is not a problem. So the phone connects to the car connects to the stereo system, and you can be riding down the road just talking your ears off, and people will think you're talking on the telephone. It makes me feel so much more normal now. But I was trustee of a trust. So here's how it played. I looked at my trustee self and I said, I need to borrow some money. I looked back and I said, well, this is a little abnormal. It's not a normal thing for us to do this. You realize you're going to have to pay interest, don't you? So, well, of course, I'm a CPA. I know that you have to pay interest. There's a time value to money and so forth. But we need to work this out. It really just needs to be a short-term loan. I said, all right, but now you know we're going to have to document this. I'm back. Yeah, I'm tired of running. So what did I do? I sat down at the computer with the word processing program of the day. In the mid-'80s, that was WordStar. Since gone, because Microsoft has absorbed everything. So it was, we'll call it Word. And I sat down and I typed this note. I typed the note as the trustee of this trust, loaning, use that term loosely, money to myself as the borrower. Now let's call that reality check. That was theft. You can call it what you want. It was plain old theft. But I see some of you in the room taking notes. So for those that are, let me offer three things. You might want to write these down. If it's Bernie Madoff, if it's Alan Stanford, if it's Gordon Grigg, you name it, anybody that's been in the news, you can take to the bank. If it went from bad choice to fraud, three things took place. It's a three-legged stool. If you can eliminate one of the legs, you will have eliminated the fraud. But the three things are need. I needed the money. Need. Second of the three-legged stool is opportunity. In this particular case, I was the trustee of the trust. I was the sole signature authority on the check. I had the opportunity. And the third is the ability to rationalize. And I rationalized that theft was borrowing. Created the fake note, took the money, and before I could call the banker back, he called me. We've looked, and it looks like you are behind. Ladies in the room, let me just tell you on the front end, okay, I'm going to reveal my weakness. I said to the banker, I said, you're right. I am so sorry. My wife pays the bills. Okay, that wasn't true, but he didn't know that. And I said, we've just had our first child. That was true. And she got so caught up in Christmas and all this kind of stuff. You know, the baby's 2 months old and you have Santa Claus. Like the baby knows that there's such a thing, but whatever. Anyway, I said she got so caught up that she forgot the payment. She just thought she had made it. I am so apologetic. I am embarrassed. This is terrible. Oh, my mercy. Let me bring you the check. He says, that's all right. He said, let me tell you something. When I was in college, I passed a bad check once. We had a male bonding experience, you know. My wife screwed up. He passed a bad check. We were tight after that. I mean, talking about a referral source, it was good. I took him the money, paid the house payment. 90 days later, I paid the trust back. But I found out it was easy. I found out that I could go back and if I enhanced my lifestyle, I enhanced my business. So I played let's enhance Chuck's lifestyle. And business grew. But every choice has a consequence. Now, it is obvious as I stand here and tell you this that I just blatantly made unethical choices. In fact, it is obvious that I blatantly made fraudulent choices, that not only did I cross the line of bad judgment, I crossed the line beyond that, but then here's a reality check. Let's use Bernie Madoff because he is the poster child. By the way, is it providence that a person who creates the largest Ponzi scheme in the United States' last name is Madoff? Would you invest your money with someone whose last name is Madoff? Because I heard the statement, Charles Ponzi created the scheme, but Bernie made off with all the money. I'm like, dude, what a great line that is. But when it took place, there is a point at which you can get so caught up in your own illusion that you begin to believe that what you know is wrong is okay or is right. Let me give you the easy one, especially for students. It's 2009. You get out, it's a rough year, it's tough to find the job. You get a job, let's call it with Bank of America or Merrill Lynch, which is part of Bank of America. Who would have thunk that a Charlotte-based bank would end up being the largest financial institution in the country? The South shall rise again. I'm sorry. But here you are, you're working for them, and they expect blood, sweat, and tears. You have to work long, you work hard. It's 60, 70-hour weeks in order to get ahead, and the competition is fierce. And it's Thursday night, and you have been working like a dog for 9, 10 months, trying to do everything that you need to do, and you decide, by golly, my girlfriend, my fiance, my wife, I'm going to make it a male thing at this point in time, they have suffered through all of the things that I've been going through. We need to go out to a nice place to eat. So you go to the nicest place you can find. Come on, darling, you deserve it. $150 bill. And then you go back the next day, Friday, maybe it's Monday or Tuesday, and you sit there and you think, they're not paying me enough. I'm not making enough to suffer through what I'm having to suffer through, but I'll do what I need to do, but they don't know. My job is to pick up new business, and you code that as a business client. After all, you can make up a name. Joseph Delmar. How do they know who Joseph Delmar is? Just put a name on there, stick it on the expense report. It's Bank of America. Who will know? And the answer to that question is perhaps nobody. Perhaps. But if you make that unethical choice and you get by with it, there's a chance you're going to do it again. They didn't catch me. Why not go ahead and put some things on my expense report? And then again. And then again. But every choice has a consequence. There's a saying, what you do in the dark will be brought to the light. You don't know when, where, or how it will come to the light, but I will be the first to tell you it will. Maybe not as you expect it, in the way you expect it, but if you try to cover something up, there's a good chance you won't succeed. So in 1990, the card was pulled and everything collapsed. Now, I have to say to you that I was very fortunate. There was a gentleman that I knew through church and Rotary who saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I was so immersed in the illusion that I forgot who I really was. That's just as honest as I can tell you. I didn't know who Chuck Gallagher was. All I really was a liar and a thief, if you want to know the truth. But he saw something in me that I did not see in myself. He gave me the opportunity to have a job. I went from a $250,000 a year career to a $25,000 a year job working for him and his cemeteries. And I was thrilled that there was a human being on the face of the earth who thought that I had some value. And with the help of family and friends, I made restitution. Now, let me say this to you. If I came along here, I'm going to venture out in the audience for just a second, but if I came along and I took money from these three gentlemen right here, I can promise you something. They are not going to like me. But if I took money from these three guys, the reality is they would rather have their money than they would have me in prison. Because if I am in jail, they can't get their money. Ask the Bernie Madoff people if they could get their money back. They want that first. Then they want him in prison. So because of the fact that I had made restitution, by this stage I had lost my license as a CPA, I had lost my career, I had lost my home, all of the possessions, anything that was of value. My marriage was teetering on the verge of not existing. The only thing I had was 2 small children at that particular moment. One of them was like 1 year old, so he didn't have a clue what was going on. And I paid the people back. Now, we weren't, as I'd call it in the South, chicken-eating buddies. They didn't really like me too well, but they didn't want me in prison. And the district attorney didn't want to prosecute me because I did his tax return for a number of years. And, well, I did him a really good job. And he figured I'd lost enough, you know, being in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs really wasn't going to help anything. So I started this new job with making $25,000 a year, and again, thrilled that someone even saw value in me. And one day, about mid-1991, I get this knock on the door. And I'm thinking to myself, now who's going to be coming to the front door? Most of the time, unless you're expecting someone to come to the front door, it's either somebody handing out religious tracts or selling something. And I'm thinking, I don't know which it is, but let me go check. So I go and I look through the little peephole. And there are these 2 guys standing outside, dressed in nice suits, just standing there. And I'm like, okay, well, let's explore this. So I opened the door, and they're standing there, said, "Are you Charles Gallagher?" Now, I don't know what it's like in South Dakota. So let me tell you on the front end, maybe there are regional differences. But in the South, if somebody calls you by your given name, that's like saying, "Bobby Roy." You know, if they call you by your given name, especially if they link the middle name to it, you are in trouble. Okay? When Mama says, "Charles Gallagher," I mean it was trouble time. That was the time I knew she was going to say, "Get a switch, boy." Some of you all younger folk, you don't know what that is, but those of you down here probably got a switching at one point in time. That's how we learned to dance. Mama says, "Roll up your legs," and then she'd hit you, pop, 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 pop. You were doing all this kind of stuff. You know, and as a guy, she'd say, "Go get one," and you'd go out and find the littlest twig you could find, you know, kind of notch it real good, and she'd pop you on the leg, it'd break, and you'd be like, "Oh, bad move." Because then she'd get this small tree trunk, and she'd hit you. "Do you know what I'm talking about?" You know what I mean? Oh, Lord, it was. Now you'd call the police on those folks. You know, it would be child abuse. But these guys were standing, "Are you Charles Gallagher?" And I was like, "Yes." And they reach in their pocket and they pulled out these beautiful gold badges. They were pretty badges, I have to admit. They're some of the prettiest badges I've ever seen. I mean, they must have worked polishing those things. One was from the Department of Labor. He wanted a little piece of old chuck for embezzlement from retirement plans. I used to teach CPE courses on the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. I knew better. Karma. The other was from the IRS. He wanted a little piece of chuck because I didn't pay tax on stolen money. Y'all, that didn't cross my mind. I mean, really, it just never crossed my mind. Can you imagine you're sitting there like on line 37, other income, you have stolen money? Who would do that? The wheels of justice move kind of slow. It was 1995 when I, in fact, did plead guilty. There was nothing to investigate. It was already out, clearly, so that was a no-brainer for them. And on October 2nd, 1995, I took those 23 steps into federal prison. A lot of people ask me questions about what prison was like. Let me give you a little taste of prison. The first thing they asked me to do was go sit in a holding cell. It's about 8 feet long, 10 feet wide. It had a wooden bench in it and a toilet. They set me in there and they gave me this paper to read. They said, "Here, read this. Here are the rules." Now, this is federal prison. You'd think the federal government can print money. They'd have enough money to get good printing done, but this stuff had been photocopied so many times it was crooked and some of the words were missing and so forth. And it took me 15 minutes to read the rules. And I sat there for 2 hours and 45 minutes thinking, what have I done? Then the door jingles. He says, "Time to come out." The door opens. There's a man standing outside in a white lab coat. On his lab coat it has Pedro. He was a physician's assistant. I step out. Look at Pedro. Then the next door opens. There is a big, large, huge African-American fellow that steps out. I mean, like Refrigerator Perry kind of big Mondo Dallas Cowboys, he's going to knock you over kind of guy. It's like, wow. And then in the third cell, a Hispanic fellow comes out who was tattooed over most of his visible body. I mean, I didn't want to see the rest of it because it just hurt seeing what all was slapped all over there in the first place. And Pedro looks at us. He says, roll up your sleeves. It's time for a TB test. And then he takes out this needle. It's got 4 prongs on the end of it. And I'm thinking, I hate needles. I am needle phobic. I generally pass out when there's a needle. And here he has this needle in his arm, and I'm thinking, Chuck, you've got to be strong. I mean, you have got to be tough. By the way, let me share with you, if you ever go to prison, I hope nobody in here does, but statistically, since we have the highest incarceration rate of any developed country, somebody in here will. But if you ever go, but if you ever go to prison, don't watch The Shawshank Redemption 2 weeks beforehand. It's a great movie, but not one you want to see before you go in. Because I'm sitting there thinking, this ain't good. And I roll up my sleeve, and he takes that needle out and jabs me in the arm. And I'm thinking, okay, I can hang with this. It's just a TB test. It's really not a big deal. It's not. And all of a sudden, the room starts going, and I'm starting to faint. And I'm sitting there, and I said, okay, I need to sit down. Pedro looks at me. He says, what's wrong, man? You allergic to needles? And I said, I just need to sit down. Then he hollers out to everybody that could hear, we've got a fainter! I'm like, oh, thank you. I have been here for 3 hours and 10 minutes, and I'm going to be somebody's wife tonight because you hollering this out. Man. Refrigerator Perry beside me, he says, don't worry, man, it's okay. He says, none of us want to be here. He said, I got you. You'll be all right. He said, I got your back. We were escorted out, given our clothes, blanket, pillow, taken to the cell. I go to the cell. My cellmate is Buck. Buck and Chuck. I don't know if they did that on intention or what, but he's a smaller African-American guy, young fella. He just looks at me. I'm thinking, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I think, well, whatever he does, I'll do. Otherwise, I'll just keep my mouth shut. It's not like you get a book going in, like Prison for Dummies. You can't go to Barnes & Noble or Borders and get, what are the rules that how you're supposed to act in this stuff. So I sat there, 24 hours passes. The next day, Buck comes and looks at me. He says, yo, man, he says, what you in here for anyway? I'm thinking, well, I need to be kind of tough here. So I put on my best tough. Actually, in prison, I should have pulled the pants down. That would have been more tough. You tell my age. I look at him, I said, I'm a thief. He said, word? I said, word? He said, yo, man. He said, I said, word. Word. I said, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? And he goes, I mean, it's like the Tasmanian devil go flying out the room. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what just happened? I've been here 24 hours, and I have no clue what this interaction was. Now, let me tell you, it's fun to do university presentations, because when I do the corporate presentation, the adults are sitting there. This will be tomorrow. This will be fun. I know exactly what's going to happen. I'll say that, and they'll look at me like, what just happened? I don't understand. I mean, I'm with you. What was that? Okay, so let me give you the translation. Word means really. You don't say. I can't believe it. Oh, Lord, you're telling me that? Really? Okay, that's word. Are you giving me your word? Well, that's what he was saying to me. So, I'm sitting there just totally confused, and he comes blowing back in the room, and he says, yo, man, he says, I'll make you a deal. I'm thinking, as a convict wanting to make a deal with me. Then it occurred to me I was one. Why not? I said, what you got in mind? He says, you're not going to make it in here. He says, but here's what I'm going to do. He said, I'll teach you how to survive in the hood. I'll teach you the language. I'll teach you what you need to know. I'll even have your back. If you will teach me how to speak correctly so that when I get out of here, I'll have a chance at getting a real job. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say to you, I know this is an odd thing to say. Ethics transcends where you are. Integrity transcends where you are. Buck was one of the most ethical persons I've ever met. He had high integrity and he did exactly what he said he would do. So today I can go into some of the worst parts of the country, and you might look at me right now and think, he ain't going to make it. But I can go there, change the language, and I'll survive. I mean, if nothing else, at least I've got a bit of the pedigree. 11-642-058. When Buck got out, I helped him get his first job. He held up his end of the bargain. I held up mine. Now, in the time that we have left, and we've got a little bit of time, there's two things I'm going to ask you to do because I really want to involve you and give you some opportunity for some questions. But there's two things that I want to tell you first. First, you have an evaluation form. Okay? So let me tell you, I would appreciate any comments that you make on the form. As I'm telling you this, those of you that have questions, and I know there are questions out there, there are two microphones, one on each side, and I want to ask you to come on down to the mic so that people can hear the question that you have. For those of you, if you're in the back of the room, don't hesitate to come down because this whole symposium and bringing me here is partially to open it up so that you can ask the questions and the things that are on your mind. We are not finished. We'll finish at 9 o'clock. But I want to open that up for you. As you fill out that evaluation form, you need to be aware that when I get a completed evaluation form back, they will be put into a drawing. So at the end of this year, someone who's been filled out the evaluation form will receive a MacBook Pro. So there may be a motivation to go ahead and fill it out because I really do appreciate the comments that you might make. I also have a book, I'll give you a quick commercial, called Second Chances, and you can buy it at the Barnes & Noble price, i.e. what Barnes & Noble buys it from me from. If you want to, I'll be happy to invoice you via PayPal. Now, that's enough commercials, because what I want to do is I want to open it up to questions that you may have before I finish up the presentation. So, if you have questions, come on down. If not, I'm going to ask you one real quick. Okay? So if you have questions, feel free to come down. Otherwise, let me start off with a question for you. How many people in the room have a Facebook account? Raise your hand. Okay, I am capturing pretty much most everybody. I've got a few down here who are like, I'm not really sure. Okay. Should I have one or not? What will take place? Now I'm going to ask you a different question. How many of you in the room, let me rewind the tape. I'm going to do this differently. You have a Facebook account, especially students. You are applying for a job. I Google you. I pull up your Facebook account. I look at what's on that Facebook account, and I can choose to interview you or disqualify you based upon what I see. How many of you, by a show of standing to your feet, feel that that is unethical for me to do? Go ahead, it's okay. Stand up. If you think it's unethical. I know some of you think it's unethical. Stand up, okay? Got 2? Gutsy, thank you very much. 3, okay. Do we have 4? Do we have 4? No? Okay. Now see, I know there's more than that because I talked to an ethics class this morning, and 40% of the class says that is unethical for you to look at my personal Facebook account and to make a judgment. But do you realize that is exactly what takes place today? Do you get that? Yes? No? No, I'm thinking more the judgment of, I left South Dakota at spring break and went to Corpus Christi. And when I went there, with my buddies, I had a drunken blitz. And all of my friends started taking out their camera phones, which in the old days you didn't have any, and took the pictures, and they stuck it on their Facebook site and tagged you, and now it goes over to your site. And so when I pull it up, I happen to get the privilege of looking and seeing what you socially are like. Like if you're sitting there, look like you're having a hard time, and you got a Corona here and a Bud Light here, and it's like, yeah, then I may disqualify you from even an interview. Do you know why I might do that? They may sign a contract with a morality clause. It may be, I'm going to use accounting just because that's easy for me, that they're going to be dealing with confidential and sensitive information. And if I see you with a Bud Light in one hand and a Corona in the other hand trying to squeeze the lime down in there, it may be that you have a bit of a drinking problem. And if you are sloshed, you might not be able to maintain that confidence. And that may not reflect on the quality of individual that I want for the firm. Are you with me? Now, it's very easy. And I use this as a simple example in talking about ethics, because ethics, we've talked about fraud. We've talked about unethical behavior. We have talked about the choices that lead up to that. But ethics spans choices that you make relative to circumstances at a given point in time. Does it mean I shouldn't have fun? No. Does it mean I shouldn't have fun and put it on Facebook? Not necessarily, unless you're wanting me to hire you. At which point in time you might just want to think about, maybe if I am making it public to the world on the internet, I should make choices that will lead me to want to hire you versus to disqualify you. For example, if you are let me just make it simple for me, a marketing major. Have you joined marketing groups? Have you joined the American Marketing Association group on Facebook? Really? There's such a... Yes? Have you joined the AICPA or the South Dakota Society of CPAs group on Facebook? Are you connecting to people who could be potential employers? Are you saying things in the public domain that differentiate who you are compared to someone else? If I were considering hiring an accounting major, let me think about this. Professional picture on Facebook, join the AICPA group, the South Dakota Society of CPAs groups, connected with people who are movers and shakers in the accounting community, and express opinions about accounting issues. Well, that sounds very boring. Yeah, maybe, but it might get you a job. In comparison to everybody else who has the sloshy pictures on Facebook, who I'm probably not, given a choice of whom will I choose, I'm going to choose the person that has shown they can think about the topic area that I have an interest in. Now that doesn't mean you should change it, but it does mean you might want to think about it, because whether you believe it is ethical or not, I'm going to use the class earlier today, because 40% of the class said it was unethical. Regardless of your opinion, I will Google you. And if I can find it out, I will. Let me give you an example of this. This will cause some of you to shudder, but it's a great example. It's one day old. It was Chicago yesterday. But here's the example. A female worked for a company and was out on medical leave because she had a problem dealing with using the computer. Okay? The typing in the screen and the whole thing was messing with her, and she was out on medical leave because she couldn't effectively use the computer. That was the claim. She was fired because the employer went on Facebook, created somebody and friended her, and then observed for 2 months how much time she spent on Facebook. Ethical or unethical? It's reality. Some would say it's unethical to create a fake person and friend someone in order to spy and find out whether that person was legitimately offering that claim. But the other side to the coin was it's unethical to say I can't use the computer when she spent 4 or 5 hours a day on Facebook. So she clearly could. Not everything is simple black and white. Sometimes there are clearly shades of gray, and it becomes a function of, am I protecting the corporate assets, or do I have some right to privacy if I happen to be taking from the corporation in this particular manner? Does that make sense? Okay, now nobody's come down to ask a question, so am I to assume there are none? I am shocked by that in a university group. Okay, go for it. Yeah, 1. Kids, I say kids, I'm 52, so y'all kids to me. You can ask any question and I will honestly answer it. I do not care what the question is. Any question I will be delighted to answer. Yes, sir.
In the popular press, the worst group of cheaters in the academic environment is school of business students. I think all of us would like to admit or admit that our students aren't the ones. But the reality is that some of them are. What do you have to say to them about the repercussions of the choices they make in the classroom?
Well, that's an interesting question because it is true that on one hand, if anybody were to ask you, a particular scenario, is this ethical or unethical, you have the intelligence to answer the question correctly. It's what I call giving a Sunday school answer. Okay, if you kind of get the gist of that. You know what to say. The question is, how do you deal with the temptation and the pressure? And that becomes the issue in the business school, perhaps more so than you find in other academic arenas. Because the pressure is immense and extraordinary. And that's where it comes into the issue of temptation. I said earlier, the question is not will you be tempted, but how will you deal with it? And that takes a lot of moxie to make the right choice in the face of repercussions that you may not like. For example, you're sitting here in business school and you know you have to be able to pass the test and you know you have to get a certain grade in order to accomplish a certain objective. And it comes time to take the test. You want to, I don't know, what is it, fake that you were sick, go to the professor, look all green and so forth, and tell the professor I need to take the test in a day or so, hoping that you can find out from your buddies what's on the test. Now maybe that's old school. Maybe new school is you've got an Apple iPhone, except I know here that you don't have AT&T much in South Dakota, so y'all probably are insulated from the iPhone scam. But you put all of the information on the iPhone because you can download the professor's PowerPoints and see it on the iPhone, but on the face of the iPhone it's a calculator. So when the teacher comes by in the accounting class, they see your calculator. That's the proctor. Okay, calculator, that's fine, because they think we're dumb. And then they take their finger and slide over and the calculator app goes away and right beneath it is the PowerPoint that has all the answers to the questions so that they can fill out the questions correctly. So what do I say? And the answer is every choice has a consequence. You can get by with some things. You will never get by with everything. And you will pay the price. There are a lot of people that I have dealt with over time. I was one of them. I thought, never been caught, probably won't get caught. It's not going to happen to me. Wrong. But there are others who had the same idea. Whether it's padding the expense report, cheating on the test, positioning yourself in an inappropriate way, whatever the circumstance may be, eventually you'll pay the price. Here's the concern that I have on the front end. And this is one you can't teach in business school. And that is, when you do the little thing and you don't get caught, what do you do again? Something else? I did. Something else? I did. Something else? I did. Something else? If you don't get caught the first time, you begin to believe you will never get caught. And what happens is it accumulates. So you may never get caught for cheating in school. You will get caught for something, and the price you pay will be tremendous. I went through school and suffered through the CPA exam. It was tough. And I will never be a CPA again. I will never have the privilege of doing that. Today, when I speak to state societies, I'm speaking as the poster child of what not to do. And I will tell you, in all honesty, that doesn't make me proud. It's not fun to suffer the consequences from the choices that you make. Other questions? If you don't want to come to the mic, speak it from where you are. I can hear. Hold on just a second. We've got one here, and then I'll grab you back there in the back. Yes, sir.
Chuck, ethics is a matter of character. What in your character, I'm sure you've reflected on this a long time, what do you think in your character lets you do it?
That's an interesting question. What in my character allowed me to do that? It's really interesting to look back and reflect. I will say, by the way, people will typically ask me, if you had it to do over again, would you? Yeah, of course. I want to go to prison. Of course not. But what led me to that? And the one thing that prison allowed me to do is stripping me of everything. It gave me time to reflect on what does it mean to be a Chuck Gallagher. And the answer to that question is, here it is simply and truthfully. I was more concerned with the being a somebody than I was with being. I was more concerned with how other people perceived me than just being me. Today, everywhere I go, I cannot change the fact. I am Chuck Gallagher. I am 11-642-058. I can't change that. If I get pulled by the highway patrol, they're going to pull it up. I am painfully honest about who I am, but it allows me to be me. And if people don't like it, I can't change that. But I don't need to create an illusion just to gain acceptance. My mother meant me no harm. I'm not blaming her in any way, shape, or form. But I got caught up in the stuff. And let me say this to you. I just left Texas back in August. And I talked with a lot of people, and I talked with a lot of folks in the high school arena as well. And I thought in the 80s, well, that was that generation. Nah, it's not that generation. That stuff thing is still strong and prevalent today. If you don't have on the right shoes, you're not carrying the right pocketbook, you don't have on the right clothes, you don't look the right way, you are not part of the crowd. Being somebody is a function of that fit. And I got caught up in that. And that's bull hockey. There was a question in the back. Yes, yes. So they had no risk of loss, and I had everything to gain. And I made a choice. It goes back to choices and consequences. But I made a choice at that point in time that I was going to be the best salesperson that they had. After all, I had everything to gain. So I made the choices to be honest, to offer great service, quality and value, and I sold cemetery property on a door-to-door basis. And I became their top salesperson. And typically in business, the reality is the rewards go to those who can perform. And I agreed to perform. And so from that, I moved into management at a particular location. Then eventually I was management in 2 states, and it became to the point that I was Senior VP of Sales and Marketing in a publicly traded company. I ran a $40 million sales region with 125 salespeople. We were the best producing group within that organization from a geographic perspective. But it was simply a matter of, 1, I did not hide who I was, and 2, I expected people to perform. I looked at it this way. If you have been pretty much at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. So I could either choose to make bad choices, and I knew where that would send me, or good choices, and those good choices will take you wherever you want your career to go. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What
Okay, what relationships was I able to preserve, and what did it tell me about friends and family? Let's talk about friends. Most of them at the time I revealed that I was a liar and a thief ran like scalded dogs. Okay? They were fair weather friends. They were friends that were business friends. As long as I had something to offer, they wanted to be my friend. When I had nothing to offer, boop, see you, Chuck. My marriage failed. I do not blame my wife for that. Let me be blunt with everybody in the room. Male, female makes no difference. This is a reality check, business or personal. It crosses all boundaries. Most of the time, success is built on trust. And if you break trust, it is extremely difficult to rebuild. It does not mean it can't be, but it's tough. And for a number of years, my wife lived with a man who she thought was her husband that was the illusion of what I had created. And she could not trust me, nor could she regain that trust. So our marriage failed. But to her credit, she wanted to allow me to be a good father. And I made the commitment to my two sons, both were pretty small at the time, that I would be blatantly honest with them. So there is nothing they could say they did not know about their dad. And they knew I went to prison. They visited me twice while I was there. And the only thing, by the grace of God, relationship-wise, that I was able to keep was the love of my two children. And our relationship is wonderful today. I did remarry. Some might ask what happened in that case. So I will tell you, on the second date, I told her, I said, "You might want to sit down, Debbie." She did. I said, "I need to tell you something." She said, "What?" I said, "I might be going to prison." Okay, guys, now think about it. It's the second date, and you tell somebody you're going to. I figured if I did not scare her off at that point, there was a chance. It was kind of like Dumb and Dumber whenever the one said, "Is there a chance?" She said, 1 in a million. Yes, there is a chance. I felt like, okay, if I didn't scare her off, there was a chance. She was like, "What did you do?" I told her. She said, okay, let me think about that a little bit. And the relationship continued. Now, for those of you that are in the marketing arena, it took me 4.5 years to close that sale. It was a little tough. We had to make it through the little prison experience thing to make sure when I came out that I wasn't like crazy. And ultimately, that has turned into a wonderful marriage of now 10 years plus. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you talked about that pressure to meet somebody.
Yes.
How do you resist that?
I'm not sure that that's an easily resistible thing. I think that there comes a point when you accept for yourself you are who you are, and you can't live up to the expectations that other people have at all times. Let me give you an example, because this is more of a business example. It's not just the personal, the being somebody. What about the corporate environment? And I use this often, especially today. What about the corporate environment where the expectation is every quarter you need to meet analyst expectations this quarter, then the next 13 weeks, and the next 13 weeks, and the next 13 weeks, and that's how you're judged, and if you can't meet it, we're going to get rid of you. That's unrealistic. There is no business in the world that is naturally going to grow every 13 weeks on a consistent basis. So then the question comes, the being somebody is personal. The growing the company on a consistent basis and meeting those estimates on an every quarter basis, that ain't natural. I'm sorry, but it isn't. But at what point in time do we step up and accept that is not a reasonable expectation? I'm sorry, I can't accomplish that. Well, that could cost you your job. Perhaps. But let me ask you this question. Would it be better for it to cost you your job and for you to work with a company that has a more realistic expectation of reality, or to go down with a sinking ship when all of a sudden everybody understands that what's been created has been fake? Wasn't most of Enron fake for a long time because of the pressure to consistently achieve the objectives? I don't know. But sometimes you have to go inside and you have to ask yourself, what works for you? it is hard to miss that pressure. Yes, sir.
Hi, I heard on the radio, you were on the radio this morning for about 20 seconds.
That was good. It's only 20
I just parked
seconds.
my car and I was getting out, but the statement you made right as you got on was that the reason you made those choices was because you were overextended and underfunded.
Yes.
And obviously that spending culture has only gotten worse since
Correct.
the 80s. And I mean, even our business school is named after a guy that got rich off of issuing high interest credit cards to people that probably had no business having credit cards.
Okay.
And so,
That was gutsy, but I'll give it to you. You go there, baby. That's gutsy. That's the one thing I love about the university setting is, sometimes you just got to go for the gold and it's okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your question.
well, my question is, what you think, I know this is a little bit off topic from what you've been saying, but what do you think needs to change in our culture to get away from that? Has the recession helped, or are people just going to go back to that? What do you think needs to change in order to fix that problem?
Okay. In the world, in reality, it's like the ocean. The tide goes in and the tide goes out, and that's the cycle of things. So the reality is we got really caught up, late 80s going into the 90s, into this whole thing of growth. The government promoted the concept that everybody should have a home. It's the American dream. Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, you need to be buying mortgages and we need to be loaning to people that can't afford it. But that's okay because it helps to quantify the American dream, and we're living in the repercussions of choices that were made then. What's going to happen today? We are contracting. The tide's gone out, so to speak, and it will stay out for a while. But if you look back at, for those of us that have been around a little while, if you look at it, it does come in cycles. So what's reality? Reality is the pendulum is swung way back over here. Nobody's borrowing. By the way, let me just digress for a second. You went off on the credit card thing. Let me go just in a different manner for just a minute. Are we actually living in the United States in a big Ponzi scheme? I mean, have you thought about that for a second? Now, it is not illegal because we are being honest about it. But what are we saying to each other in answer to your question in some sense? And what are we saying to the youth of today when we say, oh my gosh, we've got to stimulate the economy by borrowing so we can flood more money into the market so the Chinese or whomever it may be, but generally not us Americans because we don't tend to buy bonds, are going to buy our debt, and we want to infuse money into the bank so that people will borrow again. And is it not are we not taking money today to pay off what was the sin then, and we're going to have to continue that process? I mean, Madoff did it illegally. They didn't tell people. That's the difference. We're doing it legally. But I don't know. It kind of strikes me as a big Ponzi scheme. There's a point at which you got to pay the debt. And I'm not so sure. Now, the economists will debate me, and that's okay. I'm fine with that, But, well, that's a function of GDP, and I don't understand all that stuff. All I know is if you borrow money, you got to pay it off. And what happens if all the people that have bought our debt came along and say, you know what, we're a little bit tired right now, we just like our cash? I think we'd be in a world of hurt. Maybe I'm off base on this. Be kind of interested to have some talk with it. But what are we going to do? I think it will come in a cycle again. I think that it's going to go out. I think eventually it will come back to the center. And we will find everybody will be talking about, okay, it's getting better. The banks have money. There's an infusion of cash. People will start borrowing again. We're already talking about telling the banks, you all be nice on the credit cards now. Quit throwing those extra fees on there and jacking up the interest rates and stuff, because we need consumers to be able to borrow. Because if we can't borrow, we can't continue the economy. And it will go to the center, and then eventually we'll get caught up in the euphoria again, because it happens. You'll see it. It'll go through cycles in your life. And we'll get caught up in the euphoria again, and the same thing will happen. It may not be a mortgage crisis. It may be another crisis, like the dot-com boom or bust. Boom and bust. But there always are those cycles which take place, and we are in one of those cycles, just on the backside. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You talked a little bit about dinner. You asked what we are doing to help teach ethics here, what the professors are doing. I know personally, I don't think I've had a class with a professor where ethics wasn't brought up. But I guess my question to you is, what more could we be doing?
What more could the business school be doing in the arena of ethics? Here's the challenge that I think business schools have. This is a personal opinion. A, I do believe that business schools have a commitment to ethics and teach it. But I also have the belief that it becomes easy to teach in an academic environment, that you learn it through real life experience. And so if we could figure out a way to teach something that had teeth behind it so that the experience was real, tangible, not a grade, but a tangible experience, that might have an effect. The other side to it is, at what point, and this is not the University of South Dakota's issue, perhaps it's universities in general, but at what point do we actually change the culture to recognize that it is impossible to continue consistent and steady growth every quarter, every 13 weeks? Perhaps, maybe someday we just recognize, you know what, businesses do have cycles. Let's accept what a normal cycle is instead of having analysts who are 24, 28, 30 who really don't understand the industry, but they can churn numbers and they want to see the consistent growth, because that makes no sense. Okay? Other questions? We are rapidly running out of time. Let me say to you that before I took the 23 steps, I thought I made good choices. After I became 11-6-42-058, I found out in real life terms that every choice has a consequence. And I experienced the consequences. There is not a day that goes by that I don't think about choices and consequences. I'll give you a simple story. I was at Bank of America. I'd made a deposit. I walked outside the door. There was a $10 bill laying on the ground. Outside, on the ground. I picked up the $10 bill. It was on the ground outside. Now, I could have stuck it in my pocket. There wouldn't have been nobody that would have known, and I'd been $10 richer. That would have gotten me 60% of a meal at McDonald's. Woo. Choices and consequences. Not that I'm a saint, but I took the bill inside. I went to the teller and I said, somebody lost $10 outside. I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me. And they said, well, it was outside, wasn't it? I said, yes. You take the money. I don't care what you do with it, but if somebody comes back in saying I lost $10, I would rather give it to you and me walk away knowing that I had done the right thing than I would have stuck it in my pocket. I would hope that somebody might consider that same courtesy for me. Who knows? Before I took the 23 steps, I lived life as an illusion. I was just a regular David Copperfield. I'd created all kinds of illusion about who I was, how I lived, what I had, what was real and what was not. After I became 11-6-42-058, I found out something. All illusions eventually dissipate into reality. Eventually, people are going to know what is real. You can't hide reality. Before I took those 23 steps, I thought I was successful. After I became 11-6-42-058, I found out something. Success has nothing to do with the title, with the car, with the house, with the clothes, with the watch, with the shoes, the trappings. Success in reality, when it's all said and done, has to do with the impact that you have on other people's lives. When it's all said and gone, that's how you will know you are successful. So let me suggest to you, make good choices, look past the illusion, and claim your success. Every choice has a consequence. The choices that you make today will impact and define your life for the future. It's up to you. You get to choose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chuck, and thanks to Tom Davies and Angeline Lavin for putting this program together and for the students who helped out. I really appreciate it. Great speech. I'm inspired. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.